In this video, I really want to talk about fishing tiny little baits for bass. This is something that, downsizing is not something that is new, but I do feel that this is something that we should always think about when we are out there on the water, especially when we are struggling. So in this video, we're going to talk about fishing those tiny baits, downsizing, when I like to do it, and where I like to do it, some baits that I like to downsize with. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. A lot of you guys know this, but I just came out with a new pair of shorts over at Fin Fishing, the duck shorts. These are by far my favorite pair of shorts. They are a super durable material. They are stretchy, they are lightweight, and they are water resistant. I have been wearing these things all summer long, and I am so proud of these shorts. Now, I know that for a lot of you guys, it's not short season, but Christmas is around the corner, and right now these things are on sale. So I'm gonna leave some links down below in the description. You can check out the shorts, you can check out all the Fin gear, and I greatly appreciate it. Shopping at Fin, I'm telling you, it is the best way to help support the channel. Thank you guys so much for all of you who have done so. All right, let's talk a little bit about downsizing and fishing teeny tiny baits. And downsizing is not something that, like I said, is new, but I have kind of seen over the last year or so kind of a trend of different companies making these really tiny baits for bass, like really tiny baits. Like this is, I just picked up some of the X Zone Stealth Finesse series, which I think is funny because not only is it a finesse, but it's a stealth finesse. And these things are tiny. I mean, this is a tube that's 2 1/4 inches long. Look at this little creature bait. This is a 2 3/4 long creature bait, an absolutely teeny tiny French fry of a bait. This is kind of like a creature hog style bait, but I think that these baits always have a place out there on the water, especially in tough conditions. And that's actually the first thing that I want to talk about is when do I really like to downsize? Now, I've talked about this a little bit before, but I believe that in bass fishing, anytime you are struggling to catch bass, there's 2 main things that you can do. You can either upsize your lures, go to the big baits, the big swim baits, glide baits, bigger baits, or go on the opposite side of the spectrum, go to these teeny tiny baits and downsize. I truly believe that bass do get used to a certain size of bait. If you think about a lot of baits out there on the market that we throw, they are like that 4 to 6 inch range. I mean, jerk baits fall into that, chatter baits fall into that, spinner baits are all like that 4 to 6 inch range. They're all kind of in that range. So if you go bigger, 8 inches, bigger or smaller, it can really help you on the water. Now, the 2 situations that I do this the most in is when I am fishing in colder water and when I'm fishing in highly pressured situations. For me here in Ohio, there's no body of water that I go to that I'm not fishing where a ton of anglers pretty much haven't fished that day. I mean, all of our lakes here are pretty small and we have a lot of anglers and we have some good fisheries, but they see a ton of pressure. And I know that it's not just Ohio. I've been to a lot of lakes across the country that absolutely just get blistered by pressure. And so when you get into some of your favorite areas on a lake and you know that guys have been through there, that is absolutely a time to pick up some of these tiny little baits and fish them wherever you would normally fish. So maybe this is offshore structured, throwing a little tube jig. There's even little tube heads to go along with these guys. These are the X Zone tube head jigs. But maybe offshore structure fishing, instead of throwing, a football jig, you pick up a little tiny tube jig and throw it instead. It looks so, I don't want to say innocent, but it's so small to a bass that it's just like biting a little French fry. It's like even when you are full at Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving is upon us, right? Even when you are full, if you go by those little deviled eggs or something like that, they're just so teeny tiny and you know that they're good. You could be so full, you just got to pick one up and throw it in your mouth. And I think that downsizing, a lot of times, that is why you can get so many bites, because it's just, the bass don't feel don't feel overwhelmed by the bait at all. And because it is so small, it is just something different. You know, I listened to a video a number of years ago with one of my favorite YouTubers, Mikey Balls, and he was talking about basically flipping and pitching down in Florida, but with little Ned baits. You know, he would take a Gambler Ace, one of the baits that he loves so much, and cut it way down. I mean, the thing was this big. As a matter of fact, it was about the exact same size as, you know, one of these little crawls. I mean, 2.5 inch, 2 inch. He would cut it in half and he would flip that into heavy cover for like giant bass. Like I'm talking 5 to 10 pound bass. And again, one of the biggest reasons, he's fishing around a lot of pressure. And I have seen the exact same things up here. Pressured situations. And like I said, in colder water, downsizing is something that I always have an option that is a very small option with me when I'm fishing in cold water, because in cold water, you got to think about bass are cold-blooded, and so therefore their metabolism is a lot slower. So a bluegill, if they eat a bluegill in the summer, that might only give them enough kind of energy for like a day, where if they eat that same bluegill in the winter, it might kind of provide them with enough nutrients and calories or whatever to last them a week, because they are cold-blooded. So bass do not need a big thing to eat during the winter and during really cold water. So always having some sort of cold water option is extremely important. Now, the thing about downsizing is that I think that a lot of people think that if you are downsizing your baits, you need to throw spinning rods and you need to throw finesse tackle of some sort, and that couldn't be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, I love to do what I call finesse flipping, where, you know, sometimes in late summer when those bass kind of seem to be more, I tend to catch bass a little bit better in shallow water in really late summer, but I think the best way to catch a lot of those fish at times is by finesse flipping, throwing tiny baits. I mean, really downsizing your approach, you know, even your weight. For the most of the time when I'm flipping and pitching, I am using like a 1/2 ounce weight, a 3/8 ounce weight. But when I'm finesse fish flipping and pitching, I'm using a 1/4 ounce weight in a small 2.5, 3 inch bait. And with that whole system, I'm still using heavy tackle. I'm actually using a lot of times 20-pound fluorocarbon line, but with a small compact bait, because you're still putting that bait into places that are, you know, a lot of heavy cover and possibly big fish. So you need to have the gear to get that fish out, but you don't always have to throw a spinning rod to really downsize your approach. But with that being said, some of these baits absolutely are going to work a little bit better with lighter line. You know, for example, this little crawl bait that I'm holding here, this little stealth crawl, putting this on almost like a Ned head of some sort, a very light Ned head. I'm talking like less than a 1/16 of an ounce, more like, you know, even a 32nd, a very light Ned head with very light pound test, 6 pound test. I know it's a little bit scary to fish, but I'm telling you, this is going to look very natural on the bottom. It's going to literally just drift across the bottom. And it's going to take a little while to fish these baits when you're using them on lightweight and it's a small bait. Like a single cast is going to take you longer than normal, but that is the point, because that is what these cold water fish and these highly pressured fish want. And if you've ever watched one of my favorite anglers in the world, Aaron Martins, who unfortunately passed away a number of years ago now, but he would, if you ever watched him fish a drop shot, it would take him like 5 minutes for a single cast, And something that I always noticed about his drop shot is that he would use really small weights. In a lot of situations where I would think to use a 3/8 ounce weight, he would use a 1/4 ounce. Where I thought to use a 1/4 ounce, he would use an 1/8 ounce. And one of the reasons he did that was to basically force himself to fish that bait slow, because he wanted to keep it on the bottom. So using that light weight helps you to slow down in order to keep it on the bottom, and it makes your bait, even on a drop shot, just flow and look so much more natural in the water. So guys, do not forget about finesse techniques, downsizing, but also even downsizing with your flipping and pitching gear. Now, I just did a video over on Bass Fishing HQ where I ended up doing kind of what I talked about. I downsized my flipping and pitching gear one day out there on the water and actually ended up catching a good bag of fish really kind of in that late summer time frame. I'll leave that linked right here. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.